They said the snow muffled everything that winter. Even the screams. In the frozen silence of January 1733, 12 women, devout, healthy, strong, died in their beds within 48 hours. No blood, no poison, no disease, just a strange peace on their faces, like they had been kissed by something, not of this world. But behind their folded hands and soft smiles was a secret, one that should never have been unearthed. What happened inside the Sacred Heart Convent wasn't a plague. It wasn't mass suicide. It was something darker, something orchestrated, buried, sealed behind walls of ritual, silence, and obedience. The Catholic Church locked away the records for nearly 2 centuries, claiming divine mystery. But they didn't expect someone to find the letters. They didn't expect someone to read them. I'm not here to entertain you. I'm here to tear down the veil. This is not just a ghost story. It's a case of spiritual manipulation, psychological programming, and systemic control, an early experiment in mass surrender. One cloaked in holiness, but forged in something far more profane. The Sacred Heart Convent stood alone on 47 acres of dense woodland in southeastern Ohio, though back then in 1733 it wasn't yet America. It was frontier territory, isolated, suspicious of outsiders, and untouched by what we now call civilization. But the church had plans, and the nuns, young women from Ireland, Bavaria, Alsace, were the perfect vessels. They were chosen not for their faith, but for their vulnerability. Each of the 12 had endured trauma before entering the convent: famine, plague, war, or loss. And each of them believed, deep down, that suffering was the key to divine love. That idea would be used against them. Mother Superior Catherine Brennan, a name you'll remember, wasn't just a spiritual leader. She was trained in older forms of obedience. Jess, Sister Mary Margaret, said it was a calling. Others nodded, but the look in their eyes was not holy. It was longing. That's when the psychology shifted. The nuns began to romanticize the deaths, speak of them as transitions, doors, gifts. The idea took root that maybe death wasn't punishment. Maybe it was the reward. And someone, or something, wanted them to believe that. That's how you break people. Not by fear, not by pain, but by convincing them that giving up is sacred. These women didn't die by accident. They were conditioned, beautifully, methodically, over years. And if that scares you, good. You're starting to understand what this really is. The third death shattered any illusion of coincidence. Sister Mary Margaret, the convent's treasurer, shrewd, controlled. A woman who balanced the accounts down to the farthing, who could stretch 1 sack of oats into a month's worth of meals. She was the most practical of them all. She died on the 3rd morning. Same bed, same folded hands, same faint smile. But her death was different, not in how she was found, but in what she left behind: a note, tucked beneath her pillow. Torn from a page of her financial ledger, written in hurried Latin: Ego vocem audivi, veni ad me, non est mors, est redemptio. I heard the voice. It called to me. This is not death. It is redemption. Let that sink in. These were not random deaths. They were planned, or worse, invited. The voice she mentioned. No one ever heard it, but the one who died. Always the one who died next. By now, panic should have set in, but it didn't. The remaining sisters didn't scream. They didn't flee. They fasted. They prayed harder. They confessed more. They begged for purification, as if they wanted to be next, as if the deaths weren't tragedies, but a summons. This was not just religious devotion. This was programming. Mother Superior, Brennan D. They say she only made it as far as the cemetery, a few hundred feet from the convent's back door, before she dropped to her knees in the snow, arms raised, screaming one word over and over: no. She was found the next morning, frozen solid, kneeling in the same position, arms lifted, eyes open, mouth locked mid-scream, not peaceful like the others, not smiling. Terrified. It broke something inside the others. Because it proved that leaving wasn't an option. They told themselves she died of exposure, the cold, her age. But Sister Agnes wrote something else. The fear in her face. It's not from the cold. She saw something. By now, the line between life and death had blurred completely inside Sacred Heart. The survivors were not survivors in the traditional sense. They were participants, and the more bodies were laid in the convent graveyard, the more sacred it all became to them. Mother Brennan began calling the deaths the Ascension, and she changed the convent's daily liturgy to reflect that old prayers were replaced with new ones, filled with unfamiliar names not in Latin, not in Greek, older, pre-Christian, the kind you find scratched into the underside of pagan altars in ancient forests. Names that summoned awe or dread. And the sisters, they sang them because when your world is falling apart, you cling to whatever explains it. Even if it damns you. The deaths weren't random. They were being guided. By the fifth death, the convent had transformed. What once smelled of beeswax and bread now reeked of something wrong. The chapel, once a sanctuary, now echoed with voices too perfect to be human, harmonies too precise, notes that hung in the air too long, like they were suspended by something unseen. Sister Mary Joan was the next to die. She had not been sick. She had not shown signs of fear. She had spent the previous night transcribing scripture. A quiet reward. Each sister's passing followed the same pattern: a final vigil, a final smile, a final silence. The others would wake to find them perfectly still, eyes closed, hands clasped, features radiant, as if death had become ecstasy. And no one wept anymore. Sister Mary Lucille died during Compline. Not before. During. Her voice had lifted with the others in that haunting new chant. But somewhere, mid-hymn, she stopped. Her body stayed upright for the full hour, kneeling like a statue. Only after the final Amen did she tip forward, a soft thud against the chapel stone. Still smiling. Dr. Hartwell never returned. Snowfall had erased the path from Millbrook completely. Weeks passed. No priest, no medicine, no contact, and none of the sisters asked for help. Because they didn't want help. They wanted completion. This is where the shift became permanent. Sister Mary Agnes, the one still journaling, stopped writing in English. Her entries dissolved into Latin fragments, then symbols, then scratches. But one phrase repeats across several pages: non-dormient, observant. They do not sleep. They watch. Who were they? No one ever said. But each night the sisters gathered at the chapel long after Compline. They lit no candles. They brought no books. They simply sat in a circle, eyes closed, hands on their laps, and for hours. They waited. Sister Mary Agnes described it not as prayer, but as listening. And then the visions began. Several sisters claimed to see lights in the basement, a soft violet hue pulsing behind the library door. Others heard music from beneath the floorboards, not hymns, but low, droning notes that vibrated through their bones. Mother Brennan told them not to fear it. She said what they were experiencing was awakening, that the veil between this world and the next had grown thin because they were finally pure enough to hear. And if some claimed to feel their own hearts stop during prayer and then start again. They were no longer nuns. They were vessels, shells. And whatever they were making room for was getting closer. Now, if you followed this far, it's time for you to choose. This is the halfway point, not just of the video, but of you. If you're ready to see the truth to its end and become the kind of man who doesn't look away, comment the phrase below. The silence is watching. Comment it twice. That's how you lock it in. Because once you finish this journey, you won't be the same man who started it. After the 8th death. Names stopped mattering. The journals, such as they were, no longer referred to the sisters individually. No Sister Mary, no ages, no roles, only phrases like the quiet one, the empty one, or the one who sees through walls. Identity had dissolved. That's how you complete the cycle. First, they severed them from the outside world. Then from the rules of the church. Now from themselves. Because when you no longer remember who you are, you'll believe anything. Including the idea that death is not the end, But the doorway. Sister Mary Agnes wrote, "Names are chains. He told us that. He who speaks without breath. Who was he?" She never said, but her entries became darker. Less diary, more instruction, more like she was writing for someone else, someone who would find her words long after the convent was buried. Which is exactly what happened. In 1923, during foundation repairs at Sacred Heart's ruins, a wooden box was discovered behind the chapel hearth. Inside were over 80 pages, wrapped in linen, water-stained and warped with age. Half were in English. The rest, indecipherable. The original diary ends with a single line. He is in the floor. What does that mean? The basement of the convent, once a library, then a gathering place for silent listen. The silence had become sentient. That's the word Sister Agnes used. Sentient. She claimed that silence itself had begun to think, to want. And its desire was them. She wrote that at 3:13 a.m. each night, the entire convent would awaken at once, without prompting. No bell, no knock. Just awakening. All at the same time. Drawn by something. And they would gather in the basement, now stripped bare, its floor gone, exposing dirt that pulsed like breath. One sister would step forward each night, drawn not by fear, but by compulsion. By invitation. They would kneel, place their forehead to the soil, and whisper, "Feed us what we've forgotten." The silence would respond, not in words, but in images, screams, lights behind closed eyes, visions of burning churches, of faceless priests, of mouths speaking backward prayers in stone temples that predate human civilization. And when the vision stopped, one of them would not return upstairs. The body would be found before dawn, smiling, hands open, eyes burned black. This was no longer religious devotion. It was communion. They had become not worshippers, but offerings. By the 10th death, the convent wasn't a place anymore. It was a threshold. The survivors didn't speak above whispers. They moved as one, without instruction. They slept little, ate nothing, and when they weren't praying, they were waiting. For what? For him. The journal never gives him a name, only titles. The voice beneath, the sleeper in soil, he who hungers for silence. Whoever, or whatever, they had summoned from beneath Sacred Heart was not God, not demon, something older, something that waited, not in fire, not in heaven, but between. A force that didn't demand worship. It demanded surrender. And it was almost complete. Only 3 sisters remained. And by now, even Sister Mary Agnes, the recorder, the observer, had begun to change. Her final leg, a relic of a past best left undisturbed. But what they couldn't seal was the ground beneath. The excavation team, workers hired to tear down the ruins, refused to finish the job. Not because of superstition, because of what they found. Not bones. Not books. A room. Carved in perfect symmetry beneath the convent floor. Walls marked with spirals, etched deeply into the stone, not by chisel, not by human hand. And in the center, a chair. Facing a blank wall. No door. No windows. Just the chair. One of the workers sat in it, dared by the others. He began to cry within 5 minutes. When they pulled him away, he screamed a single phrase over and over. He's not gone. He's waiting for a listener. The site was shut down the next day, bulldozers left idle, the project canceled, and the Sacred Heart Convent was left to rot, surrounded by new fences, new signs, no trespassing, danger, unstable ground. But that's the lie. The ground is too stable. Like something beneath it is holding everything still. Since then, the land has changed hands 6 times. No one keeps it for more than a year. Crops don't grow. Animals won't go near. Even satellite maps show strange anomalies. A distortion, a pixel smear, right where the chapel once stood. But the most disturbing detail. The graves. There were 12 sisters buried behind the convent. Now, there are 13 headstones. One of them bears no name. Only a symbol, a spiral. Etched in stone so deeply even erosion can't touch it. And if you place your hand on that stone, some say you'll feel breath still warm still waiting. Because Sacred Heart was never just a tragedy. It was a prototype. It was never just about the nuns. It was about the structure. Every wall, every hallway, every ritual hour. Sacred Heart wasn't a convent. It was a design, a mechanism built to contain, channel, and awaken something buried long before us sing. There's one final lie you need to confront. The lie that this was an isolated event. That what happened at Sacred Heart was a tragic anomaly, a mystery sealed in time, that the dead were buried and the silence put to rest. It wasn't. The silence didn't die with the sisters. It multiplied. Because in the decades after Sacred Heart was abandoned, something began to spread, not visibly, not physically, but through people. Letters from former clergy, scattered across Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New York, speak of dreams. The same dreams Agnes described. The staircase, the bell. The man with no eyes. In 1871, a Franciscan monastery in New York reported 5 monks found dead in their beds, hands folded, smiling. In 1919, a Catholic girls' school in Massachusetts was closed indefinitely after 3 students and 2 teachers were found kneeling in a locked basement, eyes wide open, blood pooled beneath their fingernails. All of them facing a wall. Each site had one thing in common, a spiral. Etched into the floor, or carved into a desk, or hidden beneath altar cloths. Always the same, 3 rings, turning inward, terminating in a ... And where do you think these designs came from? Agnes. Her journal didn't end in Sacred Heart. Copies of her final entries were traced to a seminary in Baltimore in 1862, then again in a private Vatican library in 1904. The Church has been chasing her writings for over a century, sealing, hiding, burying, but never destroying. Because they can't. Because the moment you read it, you're part of it. Just like you are now. The spiral is not just a shape, it's a program, a psychic sequence embedded in symbol, ritual, and sound. And once you've heard it, once your mind begins to turn around it, it grows, like a parasite made of silence. That's why the sisters didn't resist. They weren't possessed. They were transformed. Every prayer was an upload, all sharing the same architectural ratios, all eventually abandoned after psychic anomalies begin to emerge among the inhabitants. What anomalies? They stop eating, stop aging, stop dreaming. Or worse, they start sharing the same dreams. The bell, the firelight, the eyeless man. And now you've seen him too. Because I didn't tell this story to scare you, I told it to mark you. You've heard the names, you've seen the patterns, you've felt the shift. Which means, whether you like it or not, you're standing in the chapel now. There's only one question left to ask. Why you? Why this story? Why now? Why did your eyes find this title, your finger press play, your mind follow every word down this spiral? Because, on some level, you already knew. You've always felt it, haven't you? That hole in the center of the world. That quiet hum behind everything they tell you is real. That itch, not on your skin, but somewhere beneath it. Whispering that there's more beneath the surface. This wasn't random. You've been circling the spiral your entire life. Every unanswered question, every dream you couldn't shake, every time the world felt scripted, mechanical, like someone had replaced reality with a copy that doesn't quite fit. It's not madness. It's memory. Something inside you remembers. The architecture, the silence, the pull toward places that should have been forgotten. Because the spiral doesn't move in one direction. It moves inward, toward the core. And the core is you. Not the part of you that pays bills, not the part that follows rules, the part that watches, the witness, the listener, the ancient remnant buried beneath layers of programming, fear, and obedience. He's not in the floor anymore. He's in the feed. In the code. In the rituals we call content. In the voices you let inside your mind. And tonight one of those voices was mine. But I'm not the spiral. I'm the